fund tells you that it will give you 16%, that is not what you actually get. Did you know that if your special fund says that its annualized return is 60%, doesn't actually mean that what you get is 60%? You didn't? Okay, then stay with me so that we can learn more. So hi guys, welcome and welcome back to my channel. We said we are saying Happy New Year until May, right? So Happy New Year. I hope that the New Year is treating you well. So far so good. And so today I want us to talk about practical steps towards investments, especially if you're a beginner. Why am I talking about this? It is because I've had a couple of my friends or a couple of people that I know reach out to me and ask me, hey Lois, I have such and such an amount of money. Where do you think I should place it to get the highest return? And my answer is this. There is no one bucket fits all when it comes to investment. Because we are all at different levels of our lives. We all want different things. And you see, there is this obsession that people have with returns, which is okay, don't get me wrong. Because at the end of the day, you want to put your money where you'll get the highest return. But there are other things that you need to be looking at besides looking at the rate of return, okay? And that is why today I want us to talk about practical investing, and we're going to use something that we call the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I am pretty sure that if you have been to a business class, even if it was in high school, you've heard of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But if you have not, then don't worry. You know why? Because that is why I am here for you, and I'm here to teach you those things. So I am going to put a snippet of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And basically, this is a pyramid that tells us where you are or the level of needs that people have at different levels of their lives, okay? So at the very bottom, which is like the biggest, is the physiological needs. This is what I like to call the survival needs. These are things you can't do without. You know, when we talk about food, when we talk about shelter, when we talk about, nowadays it's even something like Wi-Fi. If you have children, it is school fees, you know? If you have a car, for example, it is insurance. These are needs that you need for survival, okay? Or things that you need for survival. So when you ask me, for example, let's just use an absolute figure like 100K. You have 100K and you're wondering where to put it. My question to you would be, what do you want to do? Because if you want to set aside this money, for example, to pay for school fees, like we've just taken our children to school, and you know for sure, 4 months later, 4 months down the line, come April or May, you'll be required to pay school fees, right? So assuming, again, let's just use a simple figure like 30K. Assuming you have one child and the school fees for one child is 30K, you can't take that money and put it in a treasury bond, for example, right? Because when you're at this level of needs, really what you should be chasing is not the rate of return, rather than you trying to beat inflation. And also convenience. By convenience, I mean liquidity. You want to put your money where you can easily access it should you need it, right? So if, for example, you have a child that you'll be taking back to school in May, that means you have like around 3 months to save, right? And again, assuming the school fees is 30K, you can stagger it over a period of 3 months so that in January, you're saving 10K, in February, you're saving 10K, in March, you're saving 10K. So that come that time, you'll have your 30K, right? And this is what we're calling a sinking fund. But you don't want to put your money where inflation will eat it away, okay? So then this means that you should be putting your money, for example, in a money market. Why a money market? Right now, the money market will give you an average of between 8 and 13%, right? And the rate of inflation, last I checked, was around 7%. So you see, technically here, the only thing that you've done is to preserve your money against inflation. But also, you have not lost your money. Because if the inflation is 7% and the rate of return that you've gotten is 8%, it means that you're able to beat inflation. Okay? So the investment that you make should be informed by what are you trying to achieve, or at what level in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs are you? Okay? So again, for example, let's talk about you have a car and you know your insurance expires in June, for example. And again, let me just use 30K. You pay 30K for insurance. Why would you wait until June comes and then you're now struggling on where to get money? And this is the concept that we call a sinking fund. You know, when these terms are used, sometimes you're confused. You're like, a sinking fund, what is a sinking fund? So basically, a sinking fund, and that's something that we can cover in another period, is something that you set aside, yeah, for a particular need. Like we've mentioned school fees, right? I'm now mentioning insurance, so that you're doing these things gradually. And then when the time comes, you're not struggling because you already know and you can estimate with almost 99% certainty how much you're going to need, okay? So for the physiological needs, don't chase returns. Really, just chase beating inflation, okay? And also consider convenience. That is how liquid or how quick you can get your money. All right? Okay, then let's move to the next level. This next level in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, again, I will put it here so that you see, is what we call the safety needs. The safety needs is where you want to ensure that wherever you're putting your money will help you maintain your status quo should anything change. I've said this time and time again. Research shows that, for example, if today you're to lose your job, it will take you somewhere between 6 and 7 months to get another source of income. Okay? If it's business, it's even tougher. And like I've mentioned, you need to have an emergency fund. This will help you ensure that, for example, if you're living in a particular neighborhood, if you lose your source of income, you're now not looking to move from that neighborhood into a different one that will allow you to live within your means, for lack of a better word. Yeah. If your kids go to a particular category of schools, if you are to lose your income today, you don't want to take your kids out of that school to a different kind of school, right? So basically, when you're talking about safety needs, is where you're able to maintain your status of living or status quo should you not have an income, okay? And so again, like I've said, the recommended for those who are employed is at least 6 months worth of your needs, right? If it is in business, for example, or you're in consulting where you're not always sure of the income coming through, then what you need is at least 9 months, 9 to 12 months of an emergency fund. So in this, if you're at this level, like you've already sorted out your physiological needs, you're set on that side. And so now what you're looking to do is to maintain your status quo. Here, you'll have a number of things that you can consider, okay? But again, this is also informed by how soon do you need that money, okay? What is the level of risk that you're willing to take, okay? But again, remember, if you're talking about an emergency fund, this is something that you need to access ASAP should a need arise, okay? So again, I know people like to say money market is not an investment, which is true because you see, here you're not getting like an out of this world return. What you're basically doing is beating inflation. So you see, your money market funds are not dead because if you're looking for safety, a money market fund will come through greatly, okay? Then you can also decide to go the treasury bills way, okay? You know, for treasury bills, you can either take 90 days, 180 days, or a year. So, for example, if you foresee you will not need your money in the next 90 days, you can easily put it away in a treasury bill, you know, and then at the end of your 90 days, you get back your money and your return, and you're good to go. You can, for example, choose to take 180 days or 365 days, again, depending on, remember we are saying foreseeable. So when you look at your needs, when do you think you want this money, okay? Because if you need it ASAP, then a money market fund would be the best choice for you, right? We also have things that we call, for example, the special funds, okay? The likes of Kuza, Mansa X, Oak Special Fund. There are some that will require you to lock in your money, say, for example, for a period of 6 months, you know, and then you'll get your return. So if you don't foresee that you will need your money in the next 6 months, these are investment channels that you can consider, okay? So remember, all this is informed by how soon would you need your money? What is the level of risk that you want? Because you see, for example, when you talk of money markets and treasury bills, the level of risk is really low. As a matter of fact, for treasury bills, they say the risk is zero. because the government of Kenya has never defaulted. We don't foresee it will default, no, not unless extenuating circumstances happen. So special funds are a little bit risky, but you see, the higher the risk, the higher the return. However, if especially you're doing this for an emergency fund, I will still recommend go for safe returns. And what are the safe returns? There are things like money markets, things like treasury bills, things like fixed deposits. And by the way, did you know that you can negotiate for a rate with your bank if you're going to take a fixed deposit as opposed to money markets? The only problem with fixed deposits is if you need your money sooner than you thought you would need it, you run the risk of losing your interest. So that is something that you need to consider. And that is why I highly don't recommend fixed deposits. I would rather you go the money market way, because even if you want to get out, whatever interest you have accrued at that particular time is yours, and you get to take away. You get to take it away with you. Okay? Now let's move to the next level, which you're calling the love and belonging. Now, this is where your safety is sorted, your physiological needs are sorted, and now you're looking for friendship, intimacy, family. What am I referring to? Let's say, for example, you have a wedding, you have a show that is coming. I am not against you putting people in a WhatsApp group, but you actually don't even need to go that route. For example, you've planned, come December, me and my significant other are going to my parents, home for introduction. Maybe you need such and such an amount of money. Let's even assume you need like 500k. So you have between January and December to get your money in order. So here again, always remember, what you invest in will always be informed by the level of risk that you're willing to take. Okay? It's also informed by how much money do you have. Because, for example, when we talk about special funds, the likes of Kuza, for example, the minimum investment is 100k. For others, you'll get like minimum investment, say for Mansa X, is 250k. For Oak Special Fund, the minimum investment is 500k. So how much money do you have? What risk, what level of risk, or what is your risk appetite? How much are you willing to lose? Because remember, all these things have a risk element to it, okay? So, for example, when we talk of, I've used the example of a ratio. If you have a ratio or a wedding, you can start planning right now. You can put in your money, say, for example, in a special fund. For example, I saw the likes of Mansa X. They had an annualized return of 60%. So if, for example, you had, like, let's say 100k, and you, at the end of the year, you get around 145k, you see, you've still had your money, then you didn't have to, for lack of a better word, let me call it, kusumbua people. You know what I mean? Let's say, for example, for family, you're talking about parents. You have aging parents who are maybe moving towards retirement, and maybe they're not employed. Most parents, at least for my generation, were not employed. So you're looking for example, ensuring that their health is covered, their retirement is fund is covered. And this is where your insurance companies come through. That's why you need to get a financial advisor from an insurance company, that maybe you need to take life insurance. You don't even need necessarily to take a life insurance. You can just take a policy for them that matures after a particular period of time, so that when they're retired, you're not struggling to take care of your family and your friends, okay? Say, for example, you have a child who's maybe right now in kindergarten, right? And maybe after a period of 10 years, if, say, for example, you have a child who's in kindergarten right now, and I generally don't understand this new education system, especially if you're using this CBC, if you're not in the British curriculum. But let's assume in the next 15 years, right, he'll be in college. You see, that's a long-term kind of investment. So if that is what you're looking towards, you can decide to go, say, the treasury bond way. You can decide to take an infrastructure bond that will mature in like 12, 15 years, and that way you're sure that by the time he or she is getting to college, then you'll have, or university, you'll have the money that is required, okay? And then now let's move to the very last two segments of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is what we call esteem, stroke self-actualization. So this is where you want people to recognize you. You want them to say, "Kingia Mahali, you're the emperor, the conqueror," and it's okay. Like, I mean, as human beings, this is still something that we want. We all want recognition. We all want to feel respected. You know what I mean? And I want to combine this too with self-actualization. So first of all, these are people who are not afraid to lose money. Okay, so they have a higher appetite for risk, which means they could be able to actually even double their investment in a short period of time. But then it also means that there is a probability that they can lose their money. And so these are the people who will, for example, go to forex. People actually do make money in forex. But, Sister Nancy, you cannot be struggling with rent and then you want to get into forex, because the chances of you making money are very high, but also the chances of you losing your money are also very high. As a matter of fact, I was reading an article that says actually 80% of people who get into forex, they lose their money. So this is where you get, if you actually have your emergency fund sorted, you're not struggling with family, you're not struggling with physiological needs. The other thing that such kind of people can go to is crypto, those things that can give you really high returns, but also when the losses come, they're as big as the return could be. So my point is this: before you get into something, look at where you are. What exactly are you trying to solve for? And I will sing this, I will preach it as if it is the gospel. Before you jump onto, let's say, people are saying, "Oh, buy shares are giving you good returns." Don't just jump into that because your friends are doing that. Otherwise, rafiki yangu, utakufa vibaya wewe. Nakuhurumia. Anyway, that's just on a light note. What I'm trying to say is, make informed decisions. Look at, what do you want in the short term? What do you want in the long term? What is it that you're trying to solve for? Because this will inform your decision before you just go to people or just do what people are telling you. I have had people who, for example, you're out there, it's on Friday, enjoyment, and then your friend tells you, "Oh, I put my money in Sako ABC and I got this, this, and this." And now you don't even care what your long-term or short-term goals are. You just jump onto it and then it fails. Brother Bernard, you will cry, utalia. Anyway, that was just a short video. So, I mean, I don't mind advising you, but even when you come to someone and ask them, "I have such and such an amount of money," you also need to know, what are your short-term goals? What are your long-term goals? What is it that you're trying to solve for? So that we're not giving you a recommendation and then you get into that and then end up being very disgruntled. Okay? All right. Until next time. Bye-bye.